Okay, guys, so I am back with another channeled thing that I did while reading my Merlin Stone book. Again, you guys know I'm reading When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone. It is described as the landmark exploration of ancient worship of the great goddess and the eventual suppression of women's rights. That's exactly what it is. She goes back in time and she talks about the most notorious historical figures and goddesses and sages and mystics that were eventually erased out of history um, because they didn't fit the patriarchal narrative. And so those things were erased, tainted, destroyed, or covered up. And I'm going to go into this a lot deeper. Like, we're going to do a full video for this, but I just wanted to read something that I wrote about one of the first women that we meet in the Bible, if not the first. Well, technically, she's not the first woman written about in the Bible if you have access to like the ancient Jewish text. But in most American Bibles that you can go pick up on the shelf, like the one that I have back here, she's the first woman mentioned, and that is Eve. I started thinking about Eve when I was reading this book. And this is what I wrote. If we look at the first story of the woman in the Bible, we see Eve's we see that Eve was designed to be a supporter, a helpmate is what she's called, and she measures up to only a fraction of her counterpart, which is Adam, right? Adam was a whole person, she was just his rib. She is described as naive, rebellious, and some would argue that she's responsible for the destruction of the world and the exile out of Eden. My handwriting is so bad. Ew. Um, uh, though, if you look closely, you will see that God commanded Adam, her husband, not Eve. But I digress. I literally wrote, but I digress. I was feeling like sassy this day, I guess. But the history of goddesses before Adam and before Eve speak of the colorful, multifaceted woman and the goddesses that were skilled in the arts. They were great warriors, they were leaders of war, they were strategists, they were advisors, and while being recognized as mothers and the messengers of the divine. We think about the sages or the three fates in ancient Greek mythology, right? The three fates were like the oracle that could tell you what your fate was, and they had the red string. We'll get into that later if you're interested in learning that. Why in our Western religions did we change the image and the qualities of women? Why did we erase the thousands of years of history for when God was a woman? Alexa, play Ariana Grande, God is a Woman. That's like one of the best songs I've ever heard. The video is fire as well. Um, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about why why did that happen? ¿Por qué? What is the reason? Why did Eve get blamed for what happened in the Garden of Eden? Who would it serve? The first story that we learn about a woman in the Bible is the fact that one, she was designed to be one thing, a helper of the man. Let me just give a disclaimer. I am not knocking traditional roles at all. I find myself as someone who naturally is a submissive person. This is not me challenging like the roles that women want to be in, okay? But what we're talking about is a religion that we know if we foreshadow and we go thousands and thousands of years down the road, they have conditioned their people to believe that the first woman was rebellious, naive, and her actions led to the destruction of the world and the sin and all the pain in the world, right? Like, we are literally told through the Bible that we experience childbirth pain because of the fact that Eve took the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. And let's just pause there. Why was the tree of knowledge off limits? Why would, and these are just questions, okay? I'm just presenting the questions to you. Why would the tree of knowledge be off limits? What would the reason for that be? Why would we be not allowed to eat from a tree that's going to give us knowledge, okay? Let's just put a pin in that. Whose narrative would it serve for thousands and millions of people to believe that the first woman only measured up to be a fraction of the man? Who would it benefit for us to believe that a woman was so naive and so easily manipulated? Whose narrative would that serve? For the world to believe, the entire world to believe that a woman is the cause of all the pain and suffering, including childbirth, including menstrual cramps. We literally called our periods the curse of Eve because in the Bible it tells us that the fact that she took the tree of knowledge and she told her husband to take the tree of knowledge and eat the forbidden fruit, she's the reason that we have pain and suffering in the world, or the childbearing pain. Doesn't that sound convenient to blame it all on a woman? Especially if this is the same canon or patriarchy that's going to continue to want the woman to be viewed as helpmates and maidens. It's just a question. It's literally just a question. But it's a question worth asking. I do want to break down the story of Eve in the Bible. I really do. And I think that's going to be I think that's going to be a video I do relatively soon because it's on my heart to do that. Not to mention that the original story of Adam's original wife, Lilith, is taken out. Oh, not to mention that Eve actually had a book that was in the Bible of the story of the Garden of Eden from her perspective that has been taken out. That was apocryphized, meaning taken out of the Bible, not canonized. The things that are canonized are put in the Bible. So we don't get to hear Eve's side of the story unless you have access to the Apocrypha, where she tells it from her perspective. And let's be real, God commanded Adam to not eat and to make sure she did not eat from the tree of knowledge. Eve was never given that command. So if anything, Adam is to blame if we're gonna cause blame. But that's just if you actually read it. These are the types of questions that I think are worth asking because these things are done and it sounds like I'm being picky or I'm picking at it. I grew up hearing the story. I just read the Bible and I'm almost done reading it. And I do find a lot of value in it, but I do think that there are certain things that we must question as learners, as scholars, as women, as goddesses, whatever. We have to question it because this stuff was done intentionally. And it's only right if we're going to escape this like patriarchal society and we're going to escape all this. It's important that we read this and we kind of read between the lines and understand the symbolism within the stories and also the intentions behind them, that because that's equally as important, right? So I hope that this video, it did not answer any of your questions, I'm sure, but at least it caused you to ask some questions, or maybe you're like, I don't know, that is kind of convenient. Why can't we eat from the tree of knowledge, right? Why wouldn't we be allowed to have access to like abundance of knowledge in the world that we're living in, right? You would think. I have my own theories of that because again, I've studied across multiple different religions and philosophies and theologies, even astrotheology. And I kind of have my own opinion of who I think the snake actually was, and I don't think it was the devil, by the way. I think it was someone else. I've also studied very in depth Lilith, which is Adam's first wife, before she was banished from hell, banished from the Garden of Eden for saying God's name. And I think that it's gonna make for a very interesting series, but I digress. As I wrote in my book. Also, I'm gonna do a full book review on this because I'm loving reading this book. But anyway, I hope that this video caused you to ask some questions for yourself, your own questions, and I will be back with another video to break down the story of the Garden of Eden.